Hello, everybody. So I hope you have been revising all the chapters of chapter 1 to 9 from the Gospel of John. Now we are going to talk about what is there in John chapter 10. Yes. In chapter 10, Jesus uses a wonderful story to teach us important lessons about who he is and how much he loves us. First of all, they refer the good shepherd. Now, Jesus begins by talking about the sheep and a shepherd. He says, I am the good shepherd. Now, what does that mean? Well, just like a shepherd that takes care of a sheep, Jesus also takes care of us. He knows each of us by name and he wants to protect us. When we follow him, we are safe and always loved. The second reference is about the gate. Jesus also says that he is the gate for the sheep. This means that if we want to be part of his family and have a good life, we need to go through him. Just like the sheep enters the pen through the gate, we can find safety and happiness by following Jesus. Third, he refers to listening to his voice. Another important point which Jesus makes is that his sheep recognizes his voice. This means that when we listen to Jesus, we can understand what he wants us to do. He guides us in the right direction, just like a shepherd leads his sheep to good pastures. Fourth, a promise of life. Jesus tells us that he came to give us life, and not just any life, but a full and joyful life. He loves us so much that he is willing to even lay down his life for us. This shows us how important we are to him. Then he highlights about the difference between the good shepherd and the thief. Jesus talks about the thieves who come to steal and harm the sheep. He warns us that there are things in the world that can lead us away from him. But we don't have to be afraid because Jesus is always there to protect us. So, in summary, what we can learn from John chapter 10 is that Jesus is our good shepherd who loves us, protects us, and wants us to have a wonderful life. He invites us to listen to his voice and follow him. When we do that, we can be sure that we are safe and loved. Now let's talk about John chapter 11. Here we learn about love, friendship, and the amazing power of Jesus. First, the chapter 11 starts by the story of Lazarus. In this chapter, we meet a man called Lazarus. He had two sisters, Mary and Martha, who loved him very much. One day, Lazarus got very sick and his sisters were worried. They knew that Jesus could help him, so they sent a message to Jesus asking him to come fast. But what was Jesus' response? When Jesus heard that Lazarus was sick, he didn't rush to help him right away. Instead, he stayed where he was for 2 more days. This might seem very strange, isn't it? But Jesus had a special plan. He wanted to show everyone something amazing. Now, what happens? By the time Jesus arrived in Bethany, where Lazarus lived, Lazarus had already died and had been in the tomb for 4 days. Mary and Martha, his sisters, were very sad and felt like they had lost their brother forever. They both said to Jesus, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw how sad Mary and Martha were, he was deeply moved and he even cried. This shows us that Jesus cares about our feelings and our pain. He understands when we are sad. Now, what is a miracle that he does? Now, Jesus went to the tomb where Lazarus was buried. He asked the people to roll away the stone that covered the entrance of the tomb. After praying to God, Jesus called out, Lazarus, come out. And guess what? Lazarus came out of the tomb alive. Everyone was amazed and filled with joy. What is the lesson you learn? This incredible miracle teaches us that Jesus has the power even over death. He shows us that he can bring hope and new life even in the darkest times. It also reminds us that Jesus cares for us deeply and is always there for us, just like he was there for Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. So, what do we learn from John chapter 11? We learn that Jesus loves us, understands our sadness, and he has a power to bring us back to life in many ways. We can trust him with our lives and our problems because he cares for us. Now let's talk about John chapter 12. This chapter is full of exciting events that show us about love, worship, and the importance of following Jesus. Well, this chapter talks about a special dinner. It begins with a special dinner that takes place in a town called Bethany. Jesus was invited to the home of his friends, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Remember Lazarus? He was the one who Jesus brought back to life. Now, at this dinner, they wanted to show Jesus how much they appreciated him. So, Mary does a beautiful act of love. During the dinner, Mary took a very expensive bottle of perfume made of pure nard. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. This was a beautiful way to show her love and respect for Jesus. Some people were upset and thought it was a waste of money. But Jesus defended Mary. He said that she was preparing him for his burial and that her actions were very, very special. Now, next we read in this chapter that a very important event happens. Jesus is riding into Jerusalem on a young donkey. This was a big deal because it fulfilled a prophecy from long ago. And what was that? As he entered the city, people waved palm branches and shouted, Hosanna. They were excited to see Jesus and believed he was the king who could save them. Now, Jesus knew that many people were looking for a political leader, but he came to bring something much more important. What is that? Salvation and love. He taught that to follow him means to love others and serve them, just as Jesus did. This is the meaning of his coming. Now, he also talks about the importance of following Jesus. In this chapter, later we see that Jesus talks about how a grain of wheat must die to produce many seeds. This means that sometimes we have to let go of certain things to grow and help others. Jesus was telling his followers that he would soon die, but this would lead to a new life for everyone who believes in him. At the end of the chapter, Jesus invites everyone to believe in him. He reminds us that when we follow him, we are walking in the light. He wants us to share his love with others and to be a light in the world. So, in conclusion, John chapter 12, we learn about the importance of showing love and appreciation for Jesus, just like Mary did. We also see that Jesus is our King who brings hope and new life. And finally, we are reminded to believe in him and share his light with others. Now we are going to talk about the last portion of John Gospel for the Kerygma part, which is chapter 13. This chapter teaches us about love, humility, and serving others, which are very, very important lessons for all of us. Here we talk about the Last Supper. In this chapter, we find Jesus having a special meal with his friends, the disciples. This meal is known as the Last Supper because it was the last time Jesus would eat with them before he would face some very difficult things. The atmosphere was filled with love, but also with sadness because Jesus knew what was going to happen next. One of the most important parts of this chapter is when Jesus does something surprising. You know what he does? He gets up from the table, takes off his outer clothes, and puts a towel around his waist. Then he begins to wash the feet of his disciples. Now, washing feet was a job usually done by servants because people walked around in sandals and their feet got very dirty. When Jesus washed their feet, he was showing them how to be humble and serve others. He wanted to teach them that being a leader means being a servant. After he finished, he told them, if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. Now, this means we should help and care for each other, no matter who we are. After washing their feet, Jesus gave his disciples a new commandment. He said, love one another just as I have loved you. You also should love one another. This is a very, very important message. Jesus wants us to love each other in the same way he loves us. unconditionally and selflessly. Now, what was Peter's reaction on this? First, Peter, one of the disciples, did not understand why Jesus was washing their feet. He even said, "You shall never wash my feet." But Jesus explained that if he didn't wash Peter's feet, then Peter would not have a part with him, Jesus. This shows us that sometimes we do not understand God's ways, but we need to trust him. Jesus also told his disciples that they would be blessed if they put his teachings into practice. By serving and loving others, we can make the world a better place. So, in short, the chapter 13 talks about that Jesus teaches us to be humble and serve others just as he did. He wants us to love one another and help each other, showing kindness and compassion. Remember, it's not about being the greatest, it is about being a loving servant. So I hope by now you understood the entire remaining chapter of John Gospel 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we are all done, right? Now you just need to go and practice on all the MCQs, which is given as a sample in the link below so that you don't miss. And please, if required, subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss my upcoming videos on Isaiah and the letter to the Philippines. All the best for your exam.